Hello and welcome to SpeakEasy. This is not a normal conversation that I have been having with people. It is by far one of the most serious issues that grip the world. The kind of chaos, the kind of mayhem that we've seen in the occupied territories of Palestine at the hands of Israel. We now have a lot of evidence, and including the report of an independent international commission of inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. And what does this report say? This report says very clearly, and I think the key point that comes to my mind is that all Palestinians are to be exterminated. That seems to be the Israeli goal. And time and again, this independent panel has shown with evidence what the Israelis have been doing. So, how are we placed? Where is this situation heading? Is there any hope for redress? More than 20,000 children have been killed since October of 23, and over 44,000 have been injured. An economic blockade, a humanitarian blockade, food blockade, bombing of hospitals, just about everything that you can imagine has been done to the people of the people of Palestine. And let's also remember, the Palestinians don't have any army, they don't have any air force, they don't have a navy. It's the Israelis that have it all. And those images of live bombardment of the genocide, which we've all seen, those images today have receded perhaps because we have a new war going on in West Asia. But let me not dwell more on this and go straight to Justice Muralidhar, who is the head of this committee that has given this damning report, and ask him, Justice Muralidhar, firstly, can you give us a short summary of what your report says?
Certainly. First, I want to clarify to your viewers that loosely it's referred to as the UN's report. But this is an international independent commission of inquiry. It is an investigative body, it is not a judicial body. It is meant to investigate into all human rights abuses, that is, violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law in three areas, that is, occupied Palestinian territory, which is Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Israel itself. So it is a wide area. Second is, it's not a time fixed commission of inquiry. It was created by the Human Rights Council resolution, knowing fully well that this is a continuing series of actions. So among other things, we've been tasked to go also into root causes. When did it all begin? Because all of us know that 1947 resolution of the UN was the point of creation of the state of Israel. So we are supposed to go back in time as well. So we produced two kinds of reports. One is time-specific incidents, like the 7th October 2023. The commission then went immediately into it, found out what had actually happened. So that report is already there. Then we have thematic reports. We've given one report on sex and gender-based violence. We've given one on genocide, which you referred to. And now we've given a report on children. So these are thematic reports which do not necessarily follow a chronology. Now, in this children's report, what we found that in the 2-year period between 7th October 2023 and 7th October 2025, there was an intense bombing of Gaza. It stepped up because of the 7th October 2023 incidents and the pronouncements made by Israeli politicians and the government itself. The wave of attacks were far more intense. So two methods were deployed as far as targeting children were concerned. One is pick up the most densely populated areas and have repeated airstrikes, knowing fully well that children will constitute a sizable section of that population and they will not be able to resist it. Second was specific targeted attacks on children using three devices: quadcopters, snipers, and drones. Now, the quadcopters are pre-fitted with cameras, thermal imaging cameras. So, if you looked at the screen, you will know from the size of the shape of the body whether it's an adult or a child. And for many soldiers and operating these quadcopters at a remote location, it was a kind of a game. And they have said so on video, in interviews to television media channel of Israel. Sometimes they've uploaded their own, bravado, statements on social media. So we found a large number of incriminating pieces of evidence which told us how the Israeli soldiers operated. In fact, we've quoted one of them as saying that when he killed a 16-year-old defenseless Palestinian boy, his commandant actually congratulated him. Another instance, a soldier says, I was hesitant and my commander told me, forget about the age of your target, go ahead and do it. So we find that there is an actual encouragement to soldiers to do this kind of a thing. And what shocked all of us looking at the evidence was a breastfeeding 10-day-old baby being shot through the skull using a quadquarter. So, and there is a 4-year-old child. Children are absolutely defenseless and unarmed. So we found a certain trend in all of this. One is children are in positions where they're not involved in any hostilities. Like two boys are, running for the aid, and soldiers are shooting them from behind. And two boys are picking up firewood. The father is in a wheelchair, and they're shot in cold blood. So the situations in which the children were shot, where they were not even throwing stones or attacking soldiers, nothing of that sort. Second was the gunshots were specific to the head and the neck. Only today I read that a Dutch news agency has been given an award for documenting 113 such cases of children being shot at the head and the neck. This is for causing maximum damage. Third, the doctors were shocked to find small pellet entry wounds on the dead bodies of the children. And when they went further into it, they found that cube-shaped pellets had been used. Those enter the body very easily, and having entered the body, they travel within the body to cause maximum damage.
Like cluster munitions.
Absolutely, to the internal organs. So they knew that this was designed so that children will be eliminated. You have statements of right-wing politicians which we've quoted in our report. In fact, I want to read one of them for your viewers.
Please.
Just to see where this mindset comes from. This is Moshe Feiglin, a far-right politician and a former Likud member of the Israeli Knesset. He gives an interview in May 2025 to Israel's Channel 14. This is what he says. Every child, every baby in Gaza is an enemy. The enemy is not Hamas. It is not Hamas's military wing. Every child in Gaza is the enemy. We need to conquer Gaza and colonize it and not leave a single Gazan child there. There is no other victory. Then you have the Deputy Speaker Nissim Vaturi. And in 9th October 2023, he posts on social media this message. He says, erase Gaza. Nothing else will satisfy us. It is not acceptable that we maintain a terrorist authority next to Israel. Do not leave a child there. Expel all the remaining ones at the end so that they will not have a resurrection. And then almost 2 years later, he again says, and we've quoted, Gaza is full of terrorists and every child born there is already a terrorist from the moment of his birth.
So with this kind of mindset,
Yes.
which, with these quotes that you read out,
Yes.
with this kind of mindset, I mean, is there any hope for,
No,
any kind of,
No, the international community actually has to get its act together. What is happening is children are caught in the crossfire of geopolitics with the US dominating the whole scene. When we spoke to the European Union, we spoke to the Security Council, we presented our findings to each of these bodies.
And you made specific recommendations.
Even the Organization of Islamic Countries, specific bodies, because after presenting the report, we hold press conferences, but we also have these individual meetings. And Security Council members, some of them asked, of course, in that Security Council meeting, US did not participate, Russia did not participate, but all the other 13 countries participated. And they kept asking us, how do you think we can go forward? So one thing is that as far as humanitarian aid and humanitarian law is concerned, there should be no watering down of it. We should begin by saying there is an urgent need for medical evacuation of several children needing emergency medical treatment. It's actually today happening at the Rafah crossing. Large number of children are waiting evacuation. People who know the map of the area, Gaza is a strip which has along the coast. And then there is a 2-hour or 3-hour drive to West Bank. Israel will not allow people to go from Gaza to West Bank even for medical treatment. So there's no other option but to go through Egypt at the Rafah crossing. Rafah is completely demolished. There's no building standing in Rafah today. There's only a displacement camp where it's inhuman conditions are there. So children are waiting medical evacuation. Israel controls the whole passage of how many ambulances can go out, how many can come in. So many children are dying at the border for want of medical treatment.
So, Justice Muralidhar, what kind of government, what kind of state does this? Because it's quite difficult for people sitting far away from the conflict to understand this. That they have some issues of survival, whatever their thought processes are. So, could you tell us a little bit about this? What kind of, because I don't think in modern history there is an example of post World War II.
Yeah.
I don't see that we've had such a long stretch or prolonged bombardment, because there's a time period also to this.
Correct.
So what kind of state, what kind of government, what
See,
kind of society, because it does this?
So there is actually, I would think there is a systematic narrativization that is adopted in the state of Israel. People may not be aware, Israel has a Department of Public Diplomacy. They call it public diplomacy. It has a huge budget. It's meant to target the UN bodies, because apart from this commission of inquiry, which is truly independent, we have the special rapporteur, we have other kinds of mandates which are focused on the violence in West Asia and Palestine in particular. Now, Israel actually spends a lot of energy and time discrediting the whole UN system. So you will find pronouncements of all their politicians saying the UN is a biased body. We've also faced that target. What we do, this is a process that I need to explain. When we as a commission of inquiry arrive at our draft report through a very rigorous process, I must also share the process with your viewers. Let's say there is this incident I mentioned to you of two boys who were collecting firewood being shot in the cold blood. Israel accuses them of messing with the ground. It's a phrase. What Israel has done is drawn an artificial yellow line of control after 7th October 2025. This is supposed to be after ceasefire, by the way. Children don't know where a yellow line is. The line is actually not yellow. It's large blocks of some concrete supposed to be placed. But children are children. You see, if they want to go and collect firewood, if they're even somewhere near it, Israel says that you're messing with the ground, meaning you're actually laying explosives. Now, there is a video. We can see the video. The children are actually not laying any explosives at all, but they've been shot in cold blood. Now, this one video should be enough for us, but we don't rely only on that. We don't rely only on the testimony of the boy's father. We rely on a multiple, corroborative pieces of evidence. We use forensic analysis. We do geolocation. We do chronolocation. We find out if the Israeli soldiers were anywhere nearby. So we need to be satisfied that this is a solid piece of, evidence which has corroboration and which can form the basis for our conclusion. Once we arrive at this kind of a finding, we send the draft report both to the Israeli permanent mission in the UN, and we send it also to the Palestinian Authority for their comments. I must also tell you, as chair of the commission, I issue what is called a note verbal to the permanent mission for Israel, asking to meet them, asking them to engage with the commission. Never have we received any response. Now, all of this is before we finalize a report. The Palestinian Authority gave us some comments. We incorporated those comments. Israel could have given us those comments if it felt any paragraph in this report was either, according to them, a misinformation or based on evidence which was not credible. They could have easily pointed that to us, but they don't engage with the commission at all. From their point of view, engaging with any UN mechanism is a no-go. So they advise their own citizens not to talk to UN mechanisms, including us. They don't permit people entering the place. They don't permit us to enter the occupied Palestinian territory to speak to the people. We are even prepared to talk to the Israeli citizens, Israeli victims. They don't permit that. So this kind of a shutting off the UN mechanisms, and then side by side working on that.
Does that mean that, they clearly have a lots to hide? Which is why.
Otherwise, why would they not put out in the public domain the evidence, the so-called evidence that they have? They don't do that either. They prepared an 18-page rebuttal of our report. They circulated it to all the missions, didn't send it to us. They then put it in the public domain on the day we released the report. Now, in that, if you read the rebuttal, you don't find them referring to any concrete piece of evidence which contradicts our finding. More importantly, they don't contradict any of the incriminating pieces of evidence put up on social media and on the net by the Israeli soldiers themselves. There is no denial of all of that. So, with this being the scenario, to accuse this commission of bias seems unfounded. The second major criticism they have is that we are silent on the violence of Hamas. I want to point out to your viewers that the children's report was given on 23rd June. 15th June, we presented a report to the Human Rights Council on non-state actors. Non-state actors includes the settlers in West Bank who are indulging in arson, looting, killing, rape, all kinds of capture of lands and all of that of Palestinians. But it also includes the actions of the Palestinian armed groups in Gaza. Hamas is the umbrella kind of a organization which has several affiliate organizations. We've detailed the violence that they are subjecting Palestinians to. They also
In fact, I think in your report you use the word invasion.
Yes.
If I'm not wrong, for the October 7th, 23 event.
Correct. And we've detailed all of that. Since we gave that only in 15 June, we didn't think it necessary in this report to again deal with all of that. So I would also urge everyone to read many of these reports as a continuum. It's not one report or the other that conclusively establishes, but when you read all of it together, it does say, show us an intent that the Palestinians as a group should not continue. And children are the most vulnerable in that group.
And that's probably one of the most, because I mean, there are number of instances in which you all use strong language, but the thing that's stuck out for me is that they want to exterminate the Palestinians as a group, because all the evidence points to that, and that's the conclusion of your report.
And we use the word demographic vitality. See, children constitute the social and biological continuity. The minute you target children, and the targeting of children is not of the children that have been born, you're refusing to allow children to be born. So they look at reproductive rights. They target reproductive facilities. How else will you explain that of 6 pediatric facilities, 5 have been completely demolished? No neonatal facilities. There was a time the Israeli Defense Forces occupied a certain hospital. When they left, when the Palestinians entered, they found it specifically targeted the machines, the MRI, the CT scan machines, so that no medical equipment is usable thereafter. So this just definitely demonstrates,
because you also point to orphans.
Absolutely.
You also point to the drop in births.
Exactly. Birth rates have dropped drastically. Malnutrition. Many children are underweight. Can you believe there have been 150 deaths, starvation deaths, malnutrition deaths? I mean, this is 2026. We are seeing a situation where the Palestinian population, and particularly the children, are suffering destruction of physical health, medical facilities, that is the hospitals. 97% of their schools have been completely demolished. So education is cut off, health is cut off. Evacuation orders are issued with not even half an hour's time left. So children are running with their parents with whatever little belongings. Children are subject to severe forms of psychological trauma. You have Palestinian adolescents and boys, first of all, being labeled as terrorists. When a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old being labeled as a terrorist, and once you're a terrorist, you're a legitimate, target for any soldier. I'm only killing a terrorist. I'm not killing a boy. So by mislabeling a child as a terrorist, you can do whatever you want. Then the whole child rights convention, all that goes out of the window. Then you have a situation where child does not know when the next bomb is dropping. So constantly surrounded by drones, constantly subjected to explosions. So they all suffer severe mental trauma, and there are no counseling facilities, nothing whatsoever. And in the displacement camps, there is no privacy. 700 people are sharing one toilet. There is no drinking water. So we held a public hearing where 3 doctors participated, and they broke down, describing to us what they experienced as doctors. They said they had to perform amputations on babies and very tiny children without anesthesia, without painkillers. And they say the screams of those children is something that, even today haunts us. Then children are brought being labeled as WCNSF. This is doctors themselves having this category: wounded child, no surviving family. So this ties in with your question, There have been 55,000 plus children who have been orphaned in these 2 years. And orphanages are themselves attacked by the Israeli Defense Forces. A child holding a white flag is shot dead. On Hind Rajab, of course, the documentary is now able to be viewed in India. We've devoted a few paragraphs. So there is solid evidence to show how Israeli Defense Forces are specifically targeting children. So the question we're asked wherever we go is what next? See, we don't need any more evidence to demonstrate the intent to destroy the Palestinians as a group. So it actually completely confirms the genocide report that we submitted in September 2025. Many countries are ratifying parties to many of these conventions.
Including the Israelis to the Child Rights Convention, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. So we have three branches of law here that we are talking about. International human rights law. You have the conventions, you have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you have the Child Rights Convention. Then we have the international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions, all violated with impunity. Third, we have the international criminal law, the Rome Statute, which set up the International Criminal Court. And these are all documented instances of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. We've listed in para 356 of our report 11 battalions, divisions of Israeli Defense Forces. We've not named the soldiers, but we have that information. So if anyone wants to investigate the role of any of these individual soldiers, commandants, the battalions, they can. Any country wants to do it, they can approach this commission. The commission is willing to share that evidence. So there is an obligation.
What you're saying is you have names of individuals as well.
Yes.
Not just about formations.
No, certainly not. So there is an obligation on any of these treaty parties to take to the logical end perpetrators of this kind of violations of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. On the Israeli Defense Force, even today, you have dual nationals who are serving. You have more than 12,000 Americans who are serving on the defense forces. You have 9,000 plus British, French nationals who are serving. So as many as 16, 17 countries have their nationals serving the defense forces. Let's say one of them goes back to his country after serving the Israeli Defense Force. Our evidence points to his involvement in these crimes. And what we've done is we've linked the battalions to the exact incident in which they were involved.
So on this dual national thing,
yes.
Justice Muralidhar, so is it possible, say, someone who has dual nationality, he or she could be prosecuted for crimes in their country, which is not Israel?
Precisely. So this is what we call exercise of universal jurisdiction. I'm a treaty party and the perpetrator is in my territory. I am obliged to do that. This is separate from the International Criminal Court, which is issuing warrants. Now, you are obliged to, apprehend such persons if they are found within your territory. But there, like India could claim that it's not a treaty member party to the ICC Rome Statute. US has gone further. It has issued sanctions against the judges of the International Criminal Court. So that's a different story. Then you have the International Court of Justice. Now, the International Court of Justice has given 3 provisional orders in the case instituted by South Africa against Israel. Those orders are violated with impunity. Now, you are all part of the UN body. These are UN-created mechanisms. If you do not ensure that they're able to function for the purpose for which they were established, why have the UN at all? So, somewhere the country should realize that, today if you turn a blind eye to these violations, tomorrow it may be you. And then whom are you going to turn to? See, all of you came together post-World War II to say there has to be some body where people can go to, states can go to for violations, because there is so much impunity all around. The key factor here is impunity. When you asked about the Israeli Defense Forces, if we have to deal with that impunity of not just really state, but its soldiers, we have to ensure proper enforcement, effective enforcement of international human rights law and humanitarian law. And humanitarian law is very important for the short-term measures. Today, there are children in Gaza who need medical treatment. Today, there are children in Gaza who need shelter. Today, there are children in Gaza who need education. So, on these things, there can be no compromise. There should be a bottom line. We should say we don't need a court order to send an ambulance. Why do we need that? Why do you need anybody to tell us, listen, a child can't be allowed to die for want of medical relief? There is no enemy child. You see, this is something that I want to emphasize. When it comes to children, we can't allow all the entire world watching while children are getting slaughtered. This is just unacceptable. Why have an international legal order if children cannot be protected? So I told the Security Council members that this is a good starting point. Now you have the Board of Peace, right? It's a parallel mechanism. It hasn't really meant to address all these issues. In fact, if you read the resolution of the UN Security Council, which endorses the creation of the Board of Peace, which is the President Donald J. Trump plan, it is actually named like that.
Yeah, it's there in the Security Council appendix as
You
well.
will find that the entire focus is on Gaza, as if there is no West Bank, as if there is no East Jerusalem. Second, as if there is no other UN mechanism that is, dealing with this situation in OPT or Israel. Third, it ignores the two-nation policy formula. So historically, also it makes it makes a clear omission. Now, this Board of Peace supposedly submitted a report in May this year to the Security Council saying the situation in Gaza is vastly improved. I mean, nothing is further than the truth. Every day there are airstrikes. Every day children getting killed. Every day ambulances getting targeted. Journalists getting targeted. You know, the number of doctors who have died by fire from the Israeli security forces, nurses who have been killed, paramedics who have been killed. So we are actually seeing a situation where there is no international legal order, there is no rule of law.
And there doesn't seem to be much interest on the part of, say, the United States or the Western nations to implement.
So the Western nations are wringing their hands. So when you spoke to the European Union, each of them says that there are political compulsions of not being able to do much. So this is a sad state of affairs. Same is true of Organization of Islamic Countries. So you have one power, which is the United States of America, dominating the scene. See, they're doing it in several ways. They've stopped contributing to the UN financially.
Yeah.
So today, UN is in a severe financial crisis. The Secretary General has spoken about it. So many of these bodies, mandates, including our Commission of Inquiry, are unable to function fully. Like we were supposed to have a complement of 26 staff. We are down to 12. It's a different matter that these 12 are working so dedicatedly, so we are able to produce a report like this. But you can see that the number of trips that these commissions have to undertake, if they have to investigate at a global scale, has all come down drastically. So UN is closing the tap at one end, the financial tap. And then it is not letting the UN properly function because it will not ensure implementation of the decisions of the UN or the UN created bodies. It will not act on the recommendations or the findings. So on both ends, the US seem to be controlling the entire UN system, and which is a very unfortunate state of affairs.
Because if you see, I mean, sorry to digress a little bit, but if you see the standard being applied to, say, Ukraine by the West, it's quite different from, say, the Palestinians. I mean, there they talk about self-determination, they talk about sovereignty, they talk about all these issues. But when it comes to Palestinians, it's a different ballgame.
Absolutely. It's so I really hope that some of the countries are able to bring pressure within those formations, with the OIC, the EU, and the way they interact with the US, to say we can't have a situation where, right in front of our eyes, a whole generation of children is being extinguished. Children are dying of starvation. There's polio has re-emerged in Gaza. Polio which should have been eradicated long ago. So, and the psychological trauma. So what kind of children are we going to have? If these children ever survive and become adults, what kind of childhood would they have?
So the other thing which I wanted to ask you, I mean, like when you were preparing the report, we know what's happened to the ICC prosecutor.
Yes.
We know what happened to Francesca Albanese.
Correct.
So was this at the back of your mind that, that something might...
Yeah, not quite. Let me tell you very frankly. My accepting this Commission of Inquiry is because, I knew that this was an important issue. The world itself wants to know. And I want to be as dispassionate as possible on this. And I know that Israeli citizens and there are groups within Israel which realize that what is happening is not correct. So we want to talk to a large cross section, and getting former judges is useful. both Justice Florence Mumba, who is a former Supreme Court judge of Zambia, and we come through a background of looking at all of these issues, and we thought it was an opportunity for us to contribute. And then the third member, who's continuing from the past, which is Mr. Chris Sidoti, who's an Australian lawyer. They have vast experience in the UN system. They've looked at situations in Cambodia, Myanmar, and so on and so forth. So for me, I knew it would be a useful learning experience actually to see how the geopolitics works. But it also has reassured me that the kind of standards that the UN bodies adopt is quite rigorous, and the way they look at evidence and the forensic analysis and the other things they undertake. So while Mr. Sidoti has been under some pressure in social media, there's been trolling of him and labeling him as anti-Semitic. So far, neither Justice Mumba nor I have faced any such personal attacks.
I also want to, bring the fact that you're an Indian into the picture.
Correct.
And, we've seen historically that India has been an ardent supporter of the Palestinian cause.
Correct.
But of late, we see some departures from that position. And we see, how should I put it, a lot of silence also on the part of the government of India.
Correct.
Now, you've made specific recommendations to member states,
Correct.
including imposing targeted sanctions.
Correct.
So member state also includes India.
Correct.
So
Correct.
how do you look at the Indian approach to the Palestinian issue?
I really wish somebody in the NEA studies this report very carefully. We've made recommendations on stoppage of supply of arms to Israel. And this is an area that India should seriously think about. Because if all the munitions and the arms at Israel's hands are being used to target defenseless, unarmed children, I don't think no country should allow that, should not be party to that. Certainly, India should not be going down in global history as having contributed to the genocide in Gaza. And this is a serious introspection that Indian government has to undertake for long term. See, India wants, I'm sure, the UN system to work. India should not contribute to the failure of the UN system. That is not in India's interests or anybody's interests. I think whether it's African nations, Latin American nations, South Asian nations, everybody should work to making the UN an effective system. Because it is in all our collective interest that it remains a strong, neutral body to which we can turn when geopolitics overwhelms and human rights violations are allowed to be ignored with impunity.
Because you also mentioned during our conversation, it could be us tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Given the scenario.
So
that
why did we have to go back in history? Why did all of us sit around a table and agree? We have such a rich history. We have Hansa Mehta being part of the UDHR. We were very active members when the UDHR was drafted. We should remember our drafting of the Constitution was almost parallel with the drafting of the UDHR. We have a history of contributing to, international cooperation. So, and we take pride in that, don't we? It is in our interest that we do not allow the international human rights law mechanisms to fail, international humanitarian law mechanisms to fail. It is not in our interest at all. And we must be able to speak out clearly and unambiguously that certain violations we will not tolerate. And in this case, the attacks on children is something that no government anywhere in the world, much less the Indian government, should be condoning.
My final question to you, Justice Muralidhar, you made your report also makes a reference to the ceasefire, the October 25 ceasefire. And basically you did refer to the, the so-called yellow line.
Correct.
And so on.
Correct.
So it looks as if the so-called ceasefire or cessation of hostilities is basically allowing Israel to attack the Palestinians at will.
Absolutely. So even now, if you see the Iran-Israel so-called memorandum of understanding, Iran-US memorandum of understanding, while there's something said about Lebanon, nothing is said about Gaza or occupied Palestinian territory. It seems to be that this will continue. The airstrikes in Gaza, the attacks on medical facilities, on children will continue unless countries do something about it. It can't be allowed to go on like this.
Well, on that note, Justice Muralidhar, your report makes for, a very stark kind of reading, but there lies the reality. So thank you so much for talking to SpeakEasy and to Frontline.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.